The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 20101 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on a change to business. Apologies, bear with me a moment. Thank you. Just wish to confirm that I had my motion number correct there. So the next item of business is indeed consideration of Business Motion 20101 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on a change to business. Any member who wishes to speak to the motion should press their request to speak button now. And I call on Graham Day to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Minister. No member has asked to speak to the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 20101 be agreed. Are we all agreed? The motion is therefore agreed. The next item of business is consideration of Business Motion 20068 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau setting out a business programme, and I call on the Minister to move the motion.
Move, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, and I call on Douglas Lumsden to speak to and move Amendment 20068.1.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I move the amendment in my name. Presiding Officer, there is a spare slot next Thursday, so instead of MSPs sloping off early, let's make the most of the little time we have left in this session.
Let's hear one another, colleagues.
Let's make the most of the little time we have left in this session and have a debate on the SNP government's energy strategy. Because, Presiding Officer, when we come back in January, there will be a birthday, Presiding Officer, but not one to celebrate. It will have been 3 years since the SNP government published their draft energy strategy. 3 years since the SNP announced their presumption against new oil and gas. 3 years since the SNP turned their back on the oil and gas workers in the North East and the loss of thousands of jobs. So you can see why, Presiding Officer, this is not a birthday to celebrate. Now, I've asked the SNP government about 20 times if a new energy strategy will be published, but each time I'm met with a blank look. It's if the lights are on but no one is in. But maybe today will be different, Presiding Officer, and this failing SNP government will agree to my amendment, because this week, just this week, the First Minister has been keen to speak about energy. He has chased the headline, "It's Scotland's energy," claiming that he could save a third off people's bills. A bold claim, but he gave us absolutely no detail about how this would happen. So the time next week would be an ideal opportunity for them to set out their fantasy plans. Will it mean more onshore wind scarring our countryside? Or is the First Minister now in favour of zonal pricing that his government didn't support before? Does he want to stop the monster pylons that are costing billions? All of which are going to have to be clawed back in our bills. Will he be scrapping carbon levies that are adding to our bills and making our manufacturing industry uncompetitive, all in the name of net zero? Will he be looking to install more expensive floating offshore wind, all of which is subsidised through CFDs and adding more onto our bills, subsidised by bill payers right across the UK, that is? How will our baseload be provided? Since he won't allow nuclear, does he plan to turn our rural communities into one huge battery storage system?
Let's hear Mr Lumsden.
Next week would give the SNP government the chance to come clean on their fantasy claims and answer these questions. The debate could also give the SNP government the opportunity to defend the conflict of interest that my constituents in the North East find so worrying, and that is the fact that the chair of SSE is one of the First Minister's advisers on the Ministerial Code of Conduct. So we have a situation where the Energy Minister meets SSEN regularly but fails to meet concerned community groups who are seeing their countryside ruined by monster pylon substations and battery storage. And the First Minister and his advisers turn a blind eye. It stinks, Presiding Officer. And it's clear that when it comes to approving these large-scale energy infrastructure projects, Gillian Martin gets to be judge, jury and executioner, who fails to listen to the voices of our communities but is happy to jet set around the world in business class to sell our countryside to the highest bidder. Presiding Officer, having this debate next week would also give the opportunity to members of this place who took part in a convention in Inverness 4 months ago to fulfil the promise that they made to the public on that day. In that convention, MSPs signed up to undertake to do all we can across our respective parties to secure urgent debates at both Holyrood and in the House of Commons at Westminster on the attached unified statement of the highest convention of community councils dated 14th of June 2025. That statement was about looking at the impact on local communities of energy projects and the damage that they were causing. Douglas Ross signed, as did Jamie Halcrow-Johnson, Tim Eagle, Fergus Ewan, but also Emma Roddick and Marie Todd. An SNP minister, no less, signed up to more debating times on energy infrastructure in this chamber. So if she does not support my amendment, she will in effect have deliberately misled the 400 attendees of that convention in Inverness. Presiding Officer, we have time next week, so let's use it and finally have a full debate on the impact of energy infrastructure on our communities, and finally have some answers on the energy strategy.
Thank you, and I call on Graham Day to respond on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. While the member, of course, is entitled to raise this matter by this means, it is disappointing, to say the least, that his debate suggestion has not been raised with me through the normal Bureau process, and that we're debating an amendment to the business motion. And I think many members will see this
Let's
for what
hear
it
one
actually
another.
is. But to the substance of his ask, the Cabinet Secretary for Climate Action and Energy has recently sent a letter to the Citizen Participation and Public Petitions Committee to provide an update on the Scottish Government's energy strategy and Just Transition Plan. That letter outlined that there have been significant changes in the energy sector since the draft energy strategy was published. This includes the establishment of the National Energy System Operator, which the Scottish Government has jointly commissioned to produce a strategic spatial energy plan alongside the Welsh and UK governments. The Cabinet Secretary for Climate Action and Energy will also be providing evidence to the Citizen Participation and Public Petitions Committee on the 14th of January in relation to a number of petitions, including the request to publish an energy strategy. I'll give way to Patrick Harvie.
Patrick Harvie.
I'm grateful to the Minister for giving way. While I agree that bringing an amendment of this kind without taking it through the Business Bureau is clearly performative and is being done as a wheeze rather than a serious proposal for a serious debate, I would like the Minister and his government colleagues to be aware...
Point of order, Tim Eagle.
Presiding Officer, I seek your guidance on this, but my understanding is that this time is allocated so that any member can bring a change to the business motion, and to call us performative is an insult to other members in this chamber.
While it is the case that members can raise issues they wish to see debated at this point, but the content of members' contributions is generally a matter for them, and the Chair will intervene where required. Mr Harvie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Having made that comment, I would like the Minister and his government colleagues to be aware that it is not only those who want to see an energy strategy that's based on doubling down on the fossil fuel industry or chasing the votes of climate deniers who want to see a serious update, not to the Petitions Committee but to Parliament. Those of us who want to see an energy strategy that's based in serious climate policy also expect to see that brought to the Chamber, not through a short-term proposal for a debate at the last minute, but in the new year. I think the entire Parliament does expect that to happen, because the Government is not going to be able to go into the next election without having made it clear whether it supports doubling down on the fossil fuel industry or maintaining the presumption against new oil and gas extraction.
Minister.
Presiding Officer, given all of the activity that I've noted and the fact there is already a parliamentary process covering the topic, the request for a debate, certainly ahead of that concluding, is unnecessary. But I take Patrick Harvie's point, and it is of course open to the member who raised this issue, and indeed Mr Harvie, to pick this up with their own business managers and for the matter to be discussed at Bureau. That is how Bureau and this Parliament works. But, Presiding Officer, I just have to say gently to Douglas Lumsden, talking of MSPs sloping off on a Thursday afternoon is a bit rich, considering the barren nature of his benches pretty much every Thursday.
Thank you. We will move on to the question, which is that Amendment 20068.1, in the name of Douglas Lumsden, which seeks to amend motion 20068 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau setting out a business programme, be agreed? Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed, therefore we'll move to a vote, and there will be a short suspension to allow members to access digital voting.